This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello, it's Robert Kiyosaki, and a very important program to you, for you today. It's about how you can, should I say, accelerate your financial education. And I'll say this up front, is my rich dad was my coach. I mean, he talked to me constantly. He coached me from the time I was about 9 years old till I was in my 30s. And so all professionals have coaches. Amateurs don't. Like even Tiger Woods, greatest golfer on earth, had a coach, and amateurs don't because they think they can save money. So that's my way of saying you'll be given an opportunity to step it up. You know, you can listen to all the data in the world, but if you don't do something different, you don't hire a coach, then you're wasting your time and my time for just bringing this program to you. We're in a very the reason I'm on it today is we're in a crucial time. In many ways, we're at the end of what we know as the American empire. So if you're going to sit here and just have, an entertaining time, like my family, this is so entertaining, I got so much data, but you don't do anything different, then you're wasting my time and your time, and you're probably going to get smashed in the next few years. You'll have an opportunity to sign up for what I call coaching, because my rich dad was my coach. He was my mentor. All professionals have mentors. So if you're just going to sit there and listen and take the data in, then you may as well join the rest of my family, because they're not doing anything different. They live in a little bandwidth, they're a little happy, little bandwidth, making $100,000 a year. The Federal Reserve Bank is ripping us off blind. And you sit there, I got such good information today. You're wasting your time and your family's time. So with that said, under this program, we'll be talking about how you can step it up and take some action that's different, because I am quite adamant about this. So the reason we have this coaching programs available to you is so that you can take action. You can do something different. Even when I was flying in Vietnam, we had coaches. We had advanced pilots teaching us how to fly better. That's how we survived. So I'm adamant about this. I'm sick and tired of talking to people who just soak in data, but don't do anything different. So I'm happy to say I've made more money than ever before this year. I hope you have too. But if you haven't, you better do something different. I've never made so much money this year than ever before. So anyway, this is not an ordinary time. So we're a very special guest today. A dear friend of mine, I got through school sitting next to the smartest girl in the class. And her name was Sylvia. And I was sat next to Sylvia, and every time they needed an answer, I leaned over and I asked Sylvia. In school, that's called cheating. In capitalism, that's called cooperation. So I'm always cooperative, and I'm always honored to have Nomi Prince here, because she understands this is a woman of action. She has done it. She is not sitting there in a classroom at MIT or Harvard studying academic or finance theory. She's actually worked on Wall Street. She's traveled the world. She's checked out the banks, the central banks of the world. She knows what she's talking about. And I read her book and it blew me away. I was sitting up in in Alaska, reading her book going, oh my God. Because she knows what goes on behind the scenes of that fake guy, Powell and Bernanke, all these central bankers. And you listen to CNBC and Fox News and all this, don't fight the Fed. Well, you should fight the Fed because they're ripping you off. So I'm very happy to have Nomi here, because she actually takes action, more than most academics do, and she knows what she's talking about. So we're going to have a great discussion today on why the Fed is one of the biggest criminal organizations going. It is criminal what they're doing.
Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a 10 Roberts free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Go to richdadfree.com.
You see, when Biden shut down the XL pipeline, what that did was create inflation. the first thing they do is increase the price of oil. When you increase the price of oil, you cause inflation. And when you cause inflation, thank you, Jesus, but I get richer. The rich get richer with inflation. Unfortunately, for those who are the working class, the employees, the middle class, you pay higher taxes. And as you know, I don't pay taxes legally. It makes life almost impossible for the poor. You know, the poor go to the store, you know, and what they were paying $5 for is now $7. And then they demand higher wages. And the more higher the wages, the less competitive America gets as a capitalist nation. So with that, I'm very honored to have a dear friend of mine, one of the smartest people I know is Naomi Prince. If you want to find out what's going on in the central banks. And so that's why you should listen to this program. At the end of the program, sign up so you can take action because they're ripping us off. So welcome to the program, Naomi. But I'm just going to tell people what I know, and I invite you to say what you know because you've traveled the world. Could you tell us what you found out of why you traveled the world to see the central banks, visit the central banks?
Yeah, so Robert, and again, it's always great to talk to you. I always appreciate the opportunity. I learn as much as you say you learn, so that's awesome. And you know, the fact that we can share it with all of the people that need this information, it is really important. And when you talk about, you know, you having the best year, but you can still balance that with understanding that there are poor people out there that can do better, and that you're basically opening your arms to them. I think that's a really special, important thing that you do and have been doing for so many years. So thank you for sharing your time with me.
Inflation makes life harder.
That's right.
On the working class.
That's right. So the reason I travel, and it's actually a part of traveling to central banks is also traveling to countries and seeing how people are actually living and how they're impacted by things like price inflation for numbers of years. I mean, I started talking to central banks in the 90s. You know, I didn't just start when everybody started paying attention. I've been doing this for decades. And what I've discovered as things have evolved is the power of central banks around the world, whether that's the People's Bank of China, the Bank of Japan, the European Central Bank, and of course, the Federal Reserve has only increased. You know, talk about inflation, their power inflation has gone off the charts, particularly since the pandemic. Now, it was already very high since the financial crisis. What the Fed can do is create money out of nothing. Now, people say that's electronic, that's printing money. They're not printing. They are fabricating, they're manufacturing money that has no connection to actual worth, to actual value, and certainly to the actual economy. And the reason they are able to do this, one, because Wall Street and basically Washington created the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 to enable them to have that power to help Wall Street and Washington to look good because Wall Street has helped when it needs it, but also because there was never been a limitation to how much fabrication of money the Fed can do. And every time you fabricate money, I can't, you can't, we make money, right? That's different than fabricating it out of nothing. You know, you're investing in real estate, it has a return, you bank it, you move on. That's doing something actual. The Fed doesn't do that, right? The Fed creates it from nowhere. And the problem with that is the more that money is pushed into the system without an actual source, without having done anything to get there, right? The more that happens, the more devalued money actually is. And so what happens is we have all of, I call them distortions between financial assets, paper assets, and physical assets. You know, whether they be what people actually have to put in their tanks, like you're talking about the high price of fuel, whether it is gold, whether it's copper, whether it is real estate, these are physical assets. And they are basically hampered by what the Fed is doing by blowing up money. And it's not just the Fed. This is something that's happened throughout the world since the financial crisis and then the compounded effect of the pandemic. There is $31 trillion of fabricated money attached to no economy, to no investment, fabricated money, just with the four main central banks of the world, the Federal Reserve, People's Bank of China, European Central Bank, Bank of Japan, just four. If you add all the other ones in there who follow the Fed, who want to basically do what the Fed is doing to basically incur favor on that basis, it's $41 trillion of just fabricated money that deflates the value of money, We've inflated the prices of real assets. And that's where this distortion has gotten just so out of control.
Right. What Nomi's talking about here, if I produce this marker here, I'm producing a product and I sell it. That's money. But they don't even have to produce this. They just produce the money.
Right.
And again, it's what Nomi's talking about is 1913 was the Federal Reserve Act, but it was also the start of the IRS.
Right.
Because the dollar and taxes go hand in hand. And so that's why I say the rich get richer, the middle class pays more taxes, and the poor starve because food is a tangible asset. And, I have more than enough money, but I'm in shock. I was at Safeway last night going, how do people afford this stuff? So that's why, I love and trust Nomi because she understands how the central banks operate, and central banks. I mean, isn't central banking more Marxist than capitalist, Nomi?
Yeah, central banking, and particularly with the Fed at the leadership of that hierarchy of all the central banks in the world, is again not working, and it's also not investing. So it's doing really nothing to produce the money it has produced. Like, again, I mentioned it was fabricating it. And as a result, it distorts everybody's relationship to the economy. It is what increases anger amongst poor people and amongst the middle class, because their money isn't going far enough to basically pay for the inflated prices of the things they need in their lives to move forward or just to even stay in place. And that increases the anger. And you see this throughout the world. It's not just even in the United States, but it emanates. It does emanate from the Federal Reserve because other central banks really do take their cues now. I mean, they're not necessarily supposed to, but in these last few years in particular, and since the financial crisis, this explosion of money creation has been really headed by the Fed with no limitations. You talk about, Robert, that there are limitations put upon people in terms of how they can potentially behave or, what they can do or whatever that is. There are no limitations put upon the Fed. And as such, they are basically sort of, they are a criminal organization because they're not involved in the creation of anything real. And as a result, it hurts people who are in that actual real world. And this is something that I don't see changing because there's no beatback. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, right? Apparently his wealth has gone from $25 million to $60 million in just the last 2 years. Now you sit back and you're like, okay, fine, Powell, awesome, great for you. But how did he do that? Well, basically, he's at the head of the organization that can actually create its own wealth out of nowhere. So when the Federal Reserve has a policy of creating money, it basically gets inhaled by Wall Street. It gets borrowed against, debt accumulates. The financial markets do rise, but it's all basically, predicated on this paper creation. And then Powell is in this position where he can create the money that allows him to become rich without actually doing anything but creating the money, right? So it's this complete circle whereby Powell gets rich, and he's invested in the same companies that he's basically providing free money to. It's a brilliant gig. I mean, if you think about it, I'm sure you work way harder, Robert, to make your money than Powell is doing right now by just putting some policy in place that he has 100% power to be able to do.
Feeling powerless over current events and your financial future? Financial freedom is your freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over 40 million people have taken Robert's advice. Now it's your turn. Attend Robert's free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Don't wait, access is limited. Go to richdadfree.com. That's richdadfree.com.
Well, I do it legally. And there's a difference because weren't some of those Fed guys caught for insider trading?
Well, and that's the thing. Yes. I'm glad you brought that up, Robert. A number of Fed officials throughout the different Federal Reserves, there's 12 different sort of pieces of the whole Federal Reserve system in different states. There's a New York one, there's an Atlanta one, so forth. And some of them were caught, or they didn't. They weren't caught. Actually, let me take that back. They resigned for personal reasons because it turned out that they had some questionable stock trades. Now, Powell, who runs the Federal Reserve, got reappointed to another term. So there is even in the Federal Reserve System, the people who aren't necessarily at the very top are the ones who sort of mea culpa resigned for personal reasons because of what they were doing in stock trading. And Robert, this is something that goes throughout Congress.
And that's what's happening to America. So that's why I have tremendous respect for Naomi, because she doesn't talk about it. She worked on Wall Street, she traveled the world, she knows how they play the game. And the game is rigged against the middle class and the poor. And the middle class is soft. I've never seen so many soft people in all my life. I've never seen students who complain if I say something that triggers them. I'm just shocked. So the point here is this: the reason I want to talk to people is it's not that I recommend real estate.
So investing in real estate makes a lot of sense. Investing in real, right? In a place you can live in, you can rent out if you need to, you can, sort of accumulate something physical is tremendously important. It's more than half of my portfolio, probably 60, 70% of my assets are in real estate. And I think this is something where even if people can get a tiny foothold in. And I don't know what you think of this, but in the UK, for example, because things are so inflated and so high and young people can't afford to buy anything, they're actually pooling together like shares in apartments just to get their foot on the ladder. And I think that them just even getting in, if they can't afford an entire apartment, to get into the real estate ladder. You don't want to be living on the streets. Look, at the end of the day, even if it's small, even if it's shared, getting in there means that at least you'll have a home you own over your own head, or you'll expand and have 2 homes and rent 1 out, or you'll expand and have 20 homes and rent 19 out, whatever it is that you have a path.
For those of you, this is my concern, Naomi. If the stock market comes down and you guys are all young, it wipes out the old guys, the baby boomers. Because the stock market was only the game after 1974 when the 401k was invented. So we have a 60 million, baby boomers in America and throughout the world, because you see the world. If they raise their prices, all these RRSPs in Canada, superannuations in Australia, and 401ks and IRAs in America, they get toasted. And the way I see it, because I'm a pessimist, I'm a Marine pilot, the way I see it, my generation, the boomers, they had the easiest of all generations. When Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, there was inflation in 71. The baby boomers got rich really easily. The stock market crashes. My generation, the boomers, they're homeless. They're going to move in with their kids. So that's why we have Rich Dad's coaching, and that's why I love having you on the program, because you have taken action. You have traveled the world. You're not an academic who sits in a classroom.
I've been to those favelas you talk about, Robert. In fact, during COVID, I was out in Brazil, really getting a sense for what was going on. I probably traveled more during COVID than most other people. I was in Colombia looking at District 13. There was all sorts of things, but to get that sense for what you're talking about, that gap, and how can people close that gap, right, for themselves? And that's through education, and that's through action. It's really just that simple. And now, not
now.
Yeah, just now.
Now. No,
right.
Don't wait.
Right.
Because I think you know it and I know it. And inflation makes me richer, thank God. It makes the middle class pay more taxes because they're the ones who pay the taxes. But the thing I'm concerned about is the gap between the poor and everybody else increases.
That's right.
But you better take education. And what's going to happen is if the stock market will crash, and many of the fat and dumb baby boomers of my generation will become poor. And that's I hate to say it, I hate to be pessimistic, but I'd rather be prepared. Like if I tell you there's a tornado coming, you'd say, oh, he's just being a pessimist. Well, if the tornado's coming, you want to
You want to prepare. Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with that. And basically utilize that money for real assets, real estate, investing in things like copper that build, and just different kinds of physical assets or physical metals or physical tangible items that people can use.
And the reason I started this whole thing with a pitch, we have coaching. My rich dad was my coach. He was my mentor. He slapped my head so many times. You know, he goes, "You stupid son of a bitch, do this, do that." You know, like, but you can't think, because my poor dad was like Marx, academic. So if you think this is an ordinary time in history, wake up. Because that's why I recommend you sign up for coaching and learn about real estate. So, you know, this is not an ordinary time. And the reason I trust and respect Naomi so much is because she takes action. She doesn't stand in a classroom.
Understanding money, no matter what your other choices are, right? No matter what else you do, no matter what else you decide to do, is really at the core in our world, and particularly where we're at today, of what's going to make you secure, financially. And so I look at it like there's a lot of issues out there, right? We could sit here and talk about any side of any issue forever. But what I like to do is get pragmatic. And what I like to do is explain to people how money's working, who's making it work for them, and how you can make it work for you. It's very, very simple. My experience digging into that and knowing about it and having experienced it from Wall Street to talking with everybody in Washington to being around the world to central banks, all of that is what allows me to dig into and explain that for people. But at the end of the day, to me, being pragmatic about money is what makes and can make people more secure. And learning how to use money. And I get, when people don't have money, the last thing you want to do, you don't have the patience, right, to learn about money sometimes because you're worried. You have real worries. Your food prices are at all-time highs, right? I mean, you're concerned, and that is legitimate. And so the last thing you want to do is sit there and spend time, making yourself read things or think about things that you can't eat, right? But it's so important. You basically have to step out of that mentality and understand money, learn about investments, learn about real estate, and help yourself.
Right. The reason I started this whole program saying that this is not an educational program. I'm speaking today. I want you guys to hire a coach so you have a better chance of success. Right. And my family, oh my God. I have friends, outside my family. I know more than you because I have a real estate license. I said, well, how much real estate do you own? None, but I have a license. I'm a professional. I said, well, how much real estate do you own? None, but they're giving advice. So please share me. The reason I pitch coaching and all that, because my rich dad was my coach. He slapped my head until I was 35 years old. Slapped my head, not really slapped me, but said, hey, wake up. Wake up. Did you check this out? Did you check that out? Did you do this? Did you do that? So you're only as good as your teacher. So spend some money, hire a great coach, and you'll have a better chance of success. And the reason I love and respect Naomi so much is she is a woman of action. She's not just a teacher standing from a classroom.
The idea of having a coach and having one is money so well spent because you're basically leveraging off of someone else's experience. You're going to be able to take action. Like someone else has been in the war zone, right? They've gone through the ups and downs of buying and selling real estate. They're there to basically, it goes to, I used the word pragmatic before. It's like, would you rather, have someone who just has a license and doesn't buy and sell their own real estate, tell you things, or would you rather have someone who's bought and sold their own real estate? I mean, it's obvious, right? Yeah. And so that idea of having that expertise in a coach makes so much sense, whatever the outlay is, because it's only going to come back in spades, because you're going to get the benefit of someone else's experience and someone else's knowledge and someone else's work. And you're going to be able to leverage that.
I have great coaches.
Right.
Great coaches. And that's why the rich get richer. I don't pretend to know anything.
That's all
Anyway,
right.
Lumi, I have tremendous love and respect for you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
We're in a danger. My question is, how much longer can they keep playing this silly game? How much longer can the central banks keep practicing communism and nobody calls them on it?
That's a fantastic question. I think we're a couple years away from a real next crisis. I mean, and I think it'll happen during the election year. I think it'll be 2024. I think until then, they are playing this game. But at the end of the day, there is no, it's like in physics, right? A power can only stop if it's met by an opposing power or energy source or whatever that is. In central banking, there's no opposing power. And we are literally, I mean, there just isn't. If you can basically create double the amount of money you had, which was 4 trillion, a little less than 4 trillion, and now it's 9 trillion. So more than double your money by doing nothing. And there is no opposing power.
Right.
They can keep this going.
Right.
This is why it's so scary. They can continue to distort, and they continue to create more inequality and say they're doing it for the benefit of the real economy and for people, and they can keep going when they need to do that.
Right.
That's where we're at. I mean, I wish I could say there's going to be some end to that ability to distort the real economy from the markets, but there isn't. There simply isn't right now.
I think they passed a point of no return.
Yeah.
And for people that never study economics, a central communism is a command and control. It's basically like a dictatorship of the economy.
It is, and with a central bank, you're dictating the creation of money.
Correct.
And in a government, you might be dictating other things, the military, et cetera. But with central, it's very specific, and that's why it's so powerful and scary. What they can do without being elected, without having to basically show any form of transparency, without any limitation, is just to create money and not care and not have to be accountable for what happens to most of the people on this planet when they do that.
And if there's a stock market crash with the 401k, which was started in 1974, we're going to have millions of American or global baby boomers toast. They'll move in with their kids, or the kids will move in with them. And so when I say to you, the reason I say Rich Dad sponsors Rich Dad's coaching and Rich Dad's World is because please get educated. So please don't be as well. I'll take up coaching when I have money.
Right.
I would take up coaching now and find the money now, because that's what capitalists do.
No, I think that's our theme for today, Robert. Now.
It is. It is. It is.
It really is. It really is.
And I really thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
Please don't be like my family. Please don't be like them, because they have master's degrees and they have real estate licenses that they broke. They're like my poor dad. Highly educated, poor people. Don't be one of them. Thank you all very much.
We're trying